We believe each and every one of you have a specific purpose on this planet. We think it's really important that you chose to be here and bring your purpose into the room and into the planet. It's a better room, I believe, with each and every one of you in it. And I think there's a hidden factor that you know that got you into this room that very few people know is going on in the world that's causing such chaos. And I think it's a really simple, quintessential thing. I'm going to talk about it in a story. Some of you have heard this story, some of you haven't, but it's a true story. It happened in 1929. It was written in Nautical Magazine. And the story goes like this. There was a ship's captain. He was out to sea. It had been a beautiful, clear night. And he was just enjoying the moonlight glinting off the water. And he's standing on the bow of the ship. He becomes quite concerned as he sees his ship approaching something. He doesn't recognize it at first, and eventually he sees he's moving into a very thick fog bank. And the minute he gets in this fog bank, it's so thick he can barely see the bow of the ship. He looks up, he sees the light of another ship approaching in the distance. He becomes quite concerned. He tells the signalman, please tell that gentleman, move 8 degrees to the north. The signalman does so. A signal comes back, you move 8 degrees to the south. Well, the captain's a little bit perturbed. I mean, he's used to being obeyed. He's the captain, right? He says, tell that gentleman, I am the captain issuing this order. Please move 8 degrees to the north. And the signal comes back, I'm a seaman's first class. You move 8 degrees to the south. Well, now the captain's fit to be tied. He says, you tell that gentleman, you better move 8 degrees to the north. I'm on a battleship. And the signal comes back, you move 8 degrees to the south. I'm on a lighthouse. It's a true story. What's the moral of the story? How many times are we looking for things to move in our life? We're looking for change to occur in our life. And we're looking at something outside of us that we don't want to happen, that's a fixed object. We want the fixed object to move. That we want change in our life, but if we want change in our life, who is the one that's got to move? And I think you know the answer to that. If you want external results to change, what's got to shift is you've got to move, you've got to change. And that sounds really easy, but one thing we know is that change is inevitable. I'm going to talk about this more a little bit later. But what you're in this room to do, you're in this room for transformation. You're in this room for conscious change. Change is inevitable. We are unconsciously changing. You know, I look in the mirror at 61, and I definitely don't look like I looked at 50 or 40 or 30. And I think all of us know that. So you're changing no matter what. So unconscious change is one thing. It's scary, it's painful, it's fear-based. And what it more so does is kicks in a part of us that Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychoanalyst, called the lower self. And the lower self, pink marker is not the way to go with the lower self. The lower self operates according to a series of principles: fear, doubt, worry, scarcity. And this does something and triggers something in each and every one of us that I call the cue. It's not just the ego. The ego is not the biggest problem. In fact, without an ego, I thank God you have an ego, because without an ego, you probably wouldn't have survived to this point in your life. So everyone blames the problems of the world on the ego. But really what it is what I call the cue. And the cue is a quandary that occurs when your reptilian brain kicks on. And what flows through your body are 3 chemicals called cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. When cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine come out, we go through this feeling. They're called the war drugs in psychoneuroimmunology. They're like war chemicals. We want to fight or flee or feed our addictions. This is what we do. Whatever our addictions is, sex, drugs, rock and roll, we want to feed it when those chemicals are coming out because they make us feel literally upset, and we want to blame the lighthouse. Okay? That's what we do when we're stuck in the queue. The queue is a term that I coined for the quandary of what happens when these chemicals are flowing through the body. Because once they're flowing through the body, it's only a matter of time that's going to reduce that feeling in you. And then the problem with the brain is that the brain is wired for certainty. Human brains are wired for certainty. So what we want to do is blame the lighthouse. So we say the lighthouse has to move for me to be happy. And then we're stuck in a quandary. We're expecting something, fixed object on the outside of us to move. And this is what we think of as unconsciousness, unconscious change. We're unconscious about it. We're blaming others. We're feeling rejected. We feel angry. We think the anger is justified. Or what we can do here is something different from our higher self. And it's your higher self that elected to be in the room however you chose to get here. You might be here as a guest of somebody else, but it's no accident you're in this room, and you know it. And the higher self operates according to love and faith and confidence, right? The opposite of doubt is faith, and the opposite of worry is confidence. The great coach Dan Sullivan says, always protect your confidence. What we're going to do in this room today is teach you how to protect your confidence. One of the most important things you can do in your life is really put a protection around your confidence. And ultimately, when you're doing that, what you start to see is this prosperity paradigm instead of a scarcity paradigm. You start to see that there's a possibility for prosperity and abundance. I mean, the brilliance in this room is off the charts. If we were going to put you together in a think tank for a year, you'd come out with some multi-billion-dollar idea probably. But the most important piece here is that conscious change is the result of what happens when you come together in the higher self. The higher self operates according to a series of intentions, very specific intentions. So we're going to explore your intention for being in the room here today. And you're choosing this every second between one of these two energies, constantly. Higher self, lower self, right? Your higher self is your soul, your aware mind, your God self, for lack of a better term. Okay? Your lower self is the animal reptilian brain, and then it evolved into a mammalian brain, and then you have this frontal cortex, which is genius and Einsteinian. But here's the thing, the brain has a defect. Not many people know this. Because the reptilian brain wasn't replaced by the frontal cortex, your genius brain. Rather, the genius brain, which is the new kid on the block, was added to it. So devoid of a higher power, you're like Einstein with a gun. See what I mean? Because this guy is old. This is an old dinosaur. This is like hundreds of millions of years old, and this part of our brain is not that old. It's young. So who do you think gets first dibs at the incoming data when something comes in your eye? Who gets first crack? The new kid, who's not been here too long, or the old guy? Yeah, the old guy's got dominion. And we can think of this in spiritual terms, right? We could say that the Q, the ego, is the satanic influence on earth, for those of you that are in the Judeo-Christian mindset. And we see this whether it's in Islam or Hinduism or even agnosticism, atheism. We see that the higher self and the lower self exist from time immemorial, right? So what are we in this room to do to understand how to express your higher self consistently in your life? And one of the greatest things you can take from today, because some of you have been in our mentoring programs for years and still haven't figured out how to engage your pre-work ritual. How many people are doing a Prosperity Power Hour in the morning or some version? Yeah, so you're doing a pre-work ritual. How many people know you want to be doing it but aren't doing it, by a show of hands? Terrific. I love that you did that. It's awesome. Why? Law of awareness. What's the law of awareness? Say it loud.
Can't change what you're not aware of.
And can only change what you are aware of. So you're going through change, but you've got resistance from the lower self. The lower self is convincing you to not do your pre-work ritual. So what you do is you get up in the morning, right, and you're like, oh, if only I could sleep in more. Fear, doubt, worry. Negativity starts coursing through the body. The chemicals start to run. Well, let's see what's going on. Oh, another shooting. Oh, God, I can't believe this is horrible. What's that, right? And you're all stressed out already. You turn on the crawl. The stock market's down. A little more stress. Get into the car, right? It's like getting in this box, and you're fighting getting to work. You get into another box called the office, and there's all this stuff going on, your computer and negative stuff. I mean, think about it. What's going on with your confidence in that moment? Have you protected it, or have you actually engaged and allowed the stress of daily living to drop in?